Welcome to the CloudPod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Matthew.
Episode 222, recorded for the week of August 2nd, 2023. Even AWS is hit by inflation and passing that on to you, the customer. Good evening, Matt and Jonathan. How's it going?
Good, Justin. How are you?
We are recording late this week, mostly because earnings for Amazon were yesterday, and we don't want to push off earnings even further. So it's a long week, and I'm glad it's Friday, and I plan to sleep tomorrow as long as I can.
Yeah, it's been a long month this week.
It's a long month this week. It's the understatement of the century.
That took me a second. That's how long of a week it's been. It took me a second to get that.
All right. Well, first of all, sometimes, Azure dumps a lot of really boring stories out into the world. And at one point, many moons ago, and I couldn't find it in the show note archive, we had talked about customer managed failover or for early ADLS Gen 2, which is a storage type you have on Azure. And it was something that you could get failover for. And they announced about 2 weeks ago that they're now providing customer managed version of failover. And I didn't really cover it at the time because, it's DR. Who cares about DR? But Matt has thoughts. So let me tell you what this is first. And then Matt can share you what he thinks about this. Azure Storage strives to give you an effective disaster recovery offering, and you are now supporting customer managed failover of your ADLS Gen 2 accounts. Whether you are performing the test for DR or facing a true disaster, your primary endpoint can now initiate a failover from our primary endpoint to your secondary endpoint Gen 2 account. All right, Matt, what do you think?
It's just one of those features that I'm just dumbfounded that didn't exist day one. Encryption, DR, these things should just be there. And the fact that, it's ADLS has been around for a decent amount of time. And I'm just picturing, oh my God, something blew up. We have to go to our DR. Hold on, let me go open a survey case with Microsoft to initiate it to get somebody on the line quickly to get it done. Just feels mind blowing to me that was the way it was done in the past.
Well, everyone wants a DR plan that you call somebody else to do. So I don't know that I actually wanted to manage my own DR. I kind of like the idea of having Azure manage it for me. Just, I'd open a support case with me and my 10,000 best friends all trying to do the same thing because my region's been disastered. What could go wrong?
Or even just for testing. Cool. I have part of my compliance I have to do every year, a DR test. All right, let's DR a low-level environment. And how do we do it? Oh, hold on. Step 3 is called Microsoft. Just feels like a strange step 3.
Yeah, boy, I'm glad we killed it the first time.
All right. Well, then let's talk about earnings, the other exciting topic of the week.
I wasn't ready.
Every time. I laugh every time. I don't know how to turn it down. I wish I did because it's fun, but it is a little loud. Even my ears kind of ring. Well, first up was Microsoft, who announced earnings very early, a couple weeks ago, actually. They beat expectations for the last quarter of their fiscal year. Net income of $20.1 billion for fiscal fourth quarter 2023, up 20% from the year earlier. Revenue rose to $56.19 billion, ahead of Wall Street's expectations because they're bad at their jobs. But the stock was not happy and dropped 3% in after-hours trading. And I looked today, since it's been a couple weeks, it's basically down 5% since the announcement on July 25th. The future, it's down because the future doesn't look so great per the Microsoft CFO, Amy Hood, implying the first quarter revenue is only going to be between 53.8 and 54.8, implying growth of only about 8%, single-digit growth, the travesty. This is tied to revenue growth of less than 10% for 3 consecutive quarters. But where we care about the most, of course, is the Azure Intelligent Cloud, or Microsoft Intelligent Cloud, which includes Azure, Windows Server, SQL Server, GitHub, Nuance, Visual Studio, and Enterprise Services, was up 15%. Microsoft said Azure growth specifically was 26% and generated more than $110 billion in annual revenue. The growth, of course, is good, but still slower than what it was during the pandemic when it was regularly seeing about 50% growth. Holger Mueller from Constellation Research had this quote: "The key milestone is that services revenue is for the first time more than double that of product revenue, demonstrating how Microsoft is leaving its product legacy behind. While product revenue was $8 billion less over the full year, services revenue more than compensated, growing by $22 billion in the same period. Overall, it is clear Microsoft wants to become a services company and needs to produce a constant stream of services, innovations to continue this transformation, and it's well placed to do that." Is it well placed to do that? That's the question I have, because Azure announcements have been pretty darn slow over the last few months here.
They have, but I mean, they got a head start on the AI bandwagon though. Although I'm sure the security vulnerability in the news recently probably hasn't helped their share price either.
Which security vulnerability?
Which one?
Yeah, let's start with that.
That doesn't help. I was specifically thinking about the keys being stolen by the Chinese hackers and used to fake their way into other people's accounts.
Yep. Well, moving on to Google, who announced that revenue grew by 7% to $74.6 billion, ahead of the $72.8 consensus estimate. Net income was $18.37 billion, up from $16 billion a year ago. And that, friends, is what happens when you lay off a lot of people. Sundar Pichai said that there is exciting momentum building across the company as portfolio of products around AI, of course. And Google Cloud delivered a healthy revenue jump up 28%. But most importantly, it's turning into a profitable business at last. Operating income was $395 million versus the $590 million loss a year ago. And this is the second quarter that Google Cloud has made a profit. There is a quote here from Holger Mueller, again from Constellation Research. Google's decision to stretch the lifetime of its servers and networking hardware to 6 years is a key factor in Google Cloud's profitability, helps the balance sheet, and though it does also raise concerns over the reliability of its platform in terms of uptime and performance, Google does know what it's doing. Do they?
I mean, I'm okay with servers sticking around until they die. I mean, I architect things for failure anyway, so as long as Google are also architecting their services to deal with those failures when they happen, it shouldn't be an issue.
I mean, I'm just wondering how long that T2 micro, whatever underlying that T2 micro has been around for, that, or any of these really old instance types that people still use. I feel like some of those servers have to be getting up there in ages of 6 years at this point. So it wouldn't surprise me if many of the cloud vendors have a lot of these legacy systems floating around.
It's interesting because AWS won't live migrate VMs to other hosts, whereas Google will during maintenance. So
without telling you first, which is the best part.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen the instances be up for 6-7 years without a problem. So there has to be some old hardware out there. So it's probably not just Google that's running old hardware somewhere.
I'm sure the other cloud providers are, assessing this and making a determination of how long they're going to keep hardware and running. And, extending from 5 years to 6 years, I think is a pretty low risk. It gets more expensive for them from a green computing initiative, right? Like, older hardware is not as efficient. It's more power hungry. And so some of those are, a challenge for them over time as well to keep those things running for 6 years. So I don't think you'll see companies really stretch it out beyond 6. But right now there's headwinds in your business. Why not switch to 6?
What difference does it make to finances if they depreciate it over 6 years instead of 4 years, though?
The number you divide it by is smaller, so the amount you hit your books is less.
It's nice to see that Google's actually making a profit, though, and maybe they'll keep GCP around for the long term and not add to the Google graveyard.
Maybe, but I'm not sure they have enough people to keep firing to keep making a profit.
Yeah, we'll continue to hope that they continue to maintain profitability so that they continue to invest. I assume if Bard doesn't hit, though, that might be a troublesome situation. But it's good to see, them being profitable. Maybe they won't kill it, but they didn't say they want to be number 1 or number 2. They didn't want to be number 3, so still risk. And then Amazon recovered after their terrible first quarter with a nice second quarter, as well as a strong forecast for accelerating growth in the third quarter. I wish I knew what crystal ball they were using because I want that one. The stock market, of course, loved it. Revenue rose 11% to $134.4 billion, exceeding consensus estimates of $131.5 billion. Net income was $6.7 billion in the quarter, reversing the $2 billion loss from Q1, which, if you remember, was because they marked down their Rivian investment. This earnings beat was the biggest for Amazon since the fourth quarter of fiscal 2020, and the strongest indication that cost-cutting measures introduced over the last year are paying off. Also, firing people. AWS revenue rose 12% to $22.1 billion, ahead of the consensus of $21.8 billion, but still the slowest growth rate yet for the cloud provider. But the unit generated 70% of the $7.7 billion operating profit.
Wow.
I just want to know, how bad can you be at your job to be off by $3 billion? It always fascinates me.
I mean, the whole analyst thing is we talked about this before you were on the show, But like the whole idea of it is like, okay, so we're outside of your company. We have no idea anything that you have. We don't know what your forecast looks like. We don't know what your pipeline looks like. We don't know what your costs are. And we're going to try to predict within some level of accuracy how close you are going to be to the number, the range that you provided to us. So, you provided a range of 100 million to 110 million, and we think you're going to hit 106 based on what we have. And their data is from like, they hire people to go sit in parking lots at Macy's. In a mall and see how many people are going in and out of the store. And they have all kinds of crazy ways they try to determine how profitable or not profitable your company is going to be on a quarter by quarter basis to make these bets. And it is just kind of it's betting. It is purely betting because it's all based on that. And so it has to be incredibly complicated for software because in software, you don't have stores or things you can go look at or, go to a farm and see that, they're growing more corn today than they were last year at the same time. So clearly the corn market is more in demand. There's no way for them to do that for technology. So it's really about them talking to customers. This is where Gartner comes into play and other analyst firms who talk to customers, try to give them an idea of sentiment analysis of like, hey, how many customers are really excited about this product or that product? And it's all a shell game at the end of the day. So yeah, put your money in the market. Good luck to you.
But they are surprisingly accurate. I mean, they are surprisingly accurate. And that's impressive in itself. I think, as an investor, those are probably good forecasts to go on. But I just don't understand the stock being penalized for being within the range they predicted, but not meeting the external analysts' target.
Yeah, that's the part that kind of drives me crazy. Well, it's almost like they're losing value on the fact that the people who try to predict it aren't good at their job. and like it's clear, and it's like, well, why weren't you good at the job? No one talks about why the analyst is wrong. It's always about how the company missed their expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose for retail, it's easy because you've got tons of data from credit card companies and banks that you can mine for average sale price, number of sale prices across, all regions and things. But for cloud, they're not going to have access to that because you're probably not, if you're in the millions of dollars of cloud spend, you're putting it on your Amex card anymore.
Yeah. Well, and if you're like a company that's sort of built on another platform or that you're part of a supply chain, like your data actually helps inform their data for other things, right? So like when we were in the mortgage market, we were loan origination side of it, but if there's another side of the loan business, which is the servicing side. So if the loan origination side is increasing in volumes, then there's a pretty good bet that the loan servicing side would increase within the next 30 to 45 days, which would be an increase in revenue to them. So like the analysts are smart. They do know what they're doing. And so they can see some of these predictive indicators and say, okay, well, if this company's loan origination increased 25%, that means that most likely this company's servicing business will increase, X percentage associated to that. And that'll mean a growth in revenue for them. So there are things they do that are adequate and make sense. But, there's lots of data. And that's why that data is so important. That's why a lot of companies own that data and sell it for lots of billions of dollars for these companies to make good bets in Wall Street analytics. Well, there was a question and during Q&A for the Amazon earnings, of course, Andy Jassy was asked about AI, of course.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise. Shocker. Every single one of Amazon's business have multiple generative AI initiatives going on right now, which sounds a little desperate for the company. It's a little bit behind in AI. And there is basically he had to go on. They range from things that help us be more cost effective and streamline in how we run operations in various businesses to the absolute heart of every customer experience which we offer. It's true in our store business. It's true in our AWS business. It's true in our advertising business. It's true in all of our devices. And you can just imagine what we're working on with respect to Alexa there. It's true in our entertainment business, every single one. It's going to be at the heart of what we do. Significant investment and focus for us. And I do sort of harkens back to Gates writing a telling memo about how they needed to become an internet company and have that, again, Internet Explorer and their death of Netscape. Is this that moment for AWS? They're an AI company now, and that's the future?
I think they've been an AI company for a long time. They're just, not a lot of it is being customer facing.
True. I mean, they would call themselves an ML company previously, but yes, AI is now the better hot word to use, I guess.
Is AI the application of ML? I think it probably is.
Yeah, it is an application of ML for sure. Another little bit of tidbit that I got out of this earnings session is, things come from weird places sometimes. And this time, SiliconANGLE actually had a scoop on a story that they basically got out of the leaked court documents of the ongoing Activision, Blizzard, Microsoft merger trial against the FTC. apparently the FTC said they couldn't buy a big gaming company because they're a monopoly. And so apparently Microsoft's now trying to argue to the FTC that they're not a monopoly and this is a huge competitive advantage for them. But in the data that they showed that was not well redacted, they showed that Azure revenue may be 25% lower than the previous estimate. And you remember that Azure doesn't actually give specific Azure revenue. And this means that probably AWS is probably maintaining more like a 50% share of cloud revenue through 2023. And also, of course, helps Google as well. The court documents show that Azure revenue for fiscal 2022 is $34 billion, which is $10 billion lower than the analysts estimated. And while technically Microsoft can put the money where it wants to in their reporting, this may be a play to make it look like they have less of a monopoly than the FTC argues. But again, this is under oath, so I assume they're telling the truth. And as I remind you, only Amazon provides clean data on their earnings and costs for AWS spend. So a little tidbit there you got out of another trial. That's
interesting. I mean, we always knew that they were fudging the numbers a little bit with including Office subscriptions and things like that, but just to what extent is quite significant.
Yeah, I mean, $10 billion just the fact that Office 365 could be a $10 billion business kind of blows my mind just on the surface of it.
Yeah,
I want to go back to one thing, to Auntie Jassy saying that just imagine what the Alexa team working on. I thought they'd fired the Alexa team.
They laid off a bunch of them, but maybe they kept some. I don't know. They fired the old guys who built hardware, and now the new teams are working on AI to make it better. I don't know.
You don't need new hardware anymore, Jonathan. How many do you have at your house?
A couple hundred.
I mostly use them as coasters anymore, honestly.
Someone was talking to me the other day about he's like, oh yeah, we're a Google house. And I was like, oh yeah, I have one of those too. It's in a drawer. It's been there for 2 years now, just sitting there. I haven't not plugged it in. It's a nice one too with a screen. I think I got it for free from Google. They gave it to me at some event I was at. It just sits in a drawer. I have a couple series around. Those are terrible. And then I have Alexas everywhere else. But yeah, everyone's got a dime a dozen of them at this point, it seems.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to AWS news this week. They have some new regions for you. First up is their new region in Tel Aviv, Israel, of course. My only complaint about this new region is that they named it IL-Central-1 in the API name, which, depending on your font selection, could be really difficult to tell. And so do keep that in mind if you're working in the Israeli region and you're having trouble with your API command or CLI command, you might have typoed it, and you should look really careful at the IL that you actually properly entered it. So keep that in mind. And then, of course, they have a new local zone now in Arizona, which must be hard on their carbon neutral plans. But that new local zone is available to your Arizona businesses who'd like to have EC2, EBS, and more services very close to them in Arizona, in Phoenix.
Nice.
I'm still trying to figure out where in Israel you have 3 zones that are more than 200 miles apart from each other. All right, you got one up north, you got one maybe south of Tel Aviv, and one, at the desert, in the Negev, all the way down south. Just doesn't feel far enough away from each other.
Yeah, we need someone to accidentally leak all that data again, so we get an updated Amazon map, because they don't like to tell you exactly where these things are. But there's that leak that came out a couple years ago, and they had the actual addresses of all of the data center regions and availability zones. They just need one of those to happen, so we can tell. Maybe someday we'll have the answer to this question. I'm sure someone in Israel knows. It's a small country, right? You must have a relative there who knows, Matt. Go drive around and find the Amazon data centers.
I have a couple of relatives there. I'll start asking.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you guys.
Well, you guys all know that we're all suffering from pretty high inflationary times. And, it's resulted in people getting laid off. And, people like Amazon are desperate for revenue, as you just heard in the earnings update. And so they're raising prices on their customers for the first time that I can recall. Effective February 1st, 2024, AWS will be charging you half a penny per IP hour for all public IPv4 addresses, whether attached to a service or not. If they're not attached to a service, there's actually an additional fee on top of the half a penny, just so you know, which means that for every IPv4 address, you now pay $3.72. And I said, well, if I'm allocating those out of their thing, maybe that's so bad. But then, I'm like, well, I also have public IPs on my load balancers and my NAT gateways, and I couldn't possibly be paying for those things as well, right? Nope. You are paying for all of the IPv4 addresses that you use inside of Amazon, if it's a managed service or it's not a managed service. And Amazon explains this away by saying that IPv4 addresses are a scarce resource, and the cost to acquire them has risen over 300% in the last 5 years. This new cost increase reflects the price increase that they are suffering, now passed on to you. So that's lovely. Thank you for that. You do get one free one in your first 12 months of being an Amazon customer. 750 hours of one IPv4 address, which a single load balancer use 3, so it doesn't really help you that much. And they will not charge you for your BYOIP addresses, which is nice. And if you're in the FinOps community saying, how am I going to ever know how much this is going to cost me? Well, they gave you a new dashboard to tell you just exactly how much it's going to cost. In the new Amazon VPC IP Address Manager, there's a new public IP Insights dashboard at zero cost to you. So you can see how much your new IPs are going to cost. And I actually, when I looked at it and realized I had unattached public IP sitting in my account that I had forgotten about many, many moons ago. And so I released that back to the other. So maybe I'll only have to pay for my load balancer ones now, sadly.
I get why they're doing it. They've, with all the cloud providers all buying up them, there is a scarcity of resources. But at the same point, it adds up quickly. You have 3 NAT gateways. So that's 3. You have a couple load balancers running your application, or NLBs. There's another couple 3. $4. I'm going to round up here per month. It starts to, per IP address, starts to add up real quickly. Especially if you're running, a small business, or even a large business. If you have hundreds of accounts, it adds up quickly.
Well, you don't have to use IPv4. You can just move to IPv6 and just cut yourself off from a ton of customers whose ISPs have still not gotten on board with IPv6.
But do things support only IPv6? Like, I thought the load balancers don't. Maybe I'm wrong. It's been a little bit like I thought you could. So
that was
it was IPv4 and 6.
That was my impression as well. So I actually had that as a follow-up item I did not get done before the show. Was that I was like, can I even create a load balancer that only has IPv6? I don't think you can. I think you are 100% correct on this. And I think many of the services that are managed, you can choose to add an IPv6 address, but they all come with an IPv4 one first.
Right. I think it shows as dual stack, which is, for both. I don't think you can say only IPv6.
They did actually put in the blog post a link to another blog post, which is how you can update your NAT, your load balancers and NAT gateways for ingress and egress traffic to avoid using public IPv4. So maybe that has been a change that they've recently done. But it's been a little bit.
I'm disappointed, actually. I'm disappointed that they're passing that cost on to customers. They already in possession of 100 million IP4 addresses. I think they could probably afford to not have done this.
It's a one-time cost too when they acquire them. They don't pay a yearly fee for them, to ICANN or anything. So
I mean, you do in some regions. Like AppNic has an annual fee you pay for it, but it's like thousands of dollars. It's nothing major for. It's really just to be in the registration. It's like a registration fee, basically. It is not tied to the number of IPs you own.
I found a post that breaks down all the IP space that Amazon own and have bought over the years, most recently from like MIT, sold them half of a /8 and stuff like that. But their average cost for a single IP address is $25.
Wow.
And they can use it forever.
So 4 times 12 is $48.
They cover their costs.
Yep.
So, I mean, if I was one of those Wall Street analysts, I would be potentially predicting that in February, there's going to be a revenue increase because they're going to make a lot of money on their 100 million IP addresses.
Yeah, I don't know how many are in use at any time. I mean, I'd like to think that if they're talking about charging for it, then they're reaching some kind of threshold, like 80% or something, and they need to try and slow down the adoption. But I doubt it, honestly. I think it's an easy money grab.
I think it's an easy one too.
Yes, I agree. I'm also just curious if, I think that this is their first price increase, and it was a big deal years ago when I think it was Google had the first real price increase of GKE clusters were free, and they started charging for them.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal and scared a lot of people. And I think this is going to scare people of oh my God, all of our eggs are in these cloud providers and they can adjust the cost at any time, in 4 months notice or whatever it is, February from now, it's one of those things that I'm curious if it's going to scare people in the industry and be like, well, these customers, they reserve the right to change their price with little to no notice. What are we going to do what happens if they say we're going to just double the price of network traffic all of a sudden?
Yeah, well, I mean, that it could happen, right? And then what are you going to do? Yeah. So now the one argument that they always had was, well, we've never done it to you before. They down just, shot in the head.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be okay with them charging for public IPs on EC2 instances, but not for managed services, not for NAT gateways, not for things that are obviously really high margin services.
Come on, NAT gateways are cheap. They're only like, $32 a month to sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, plus how many cents per gigabyte for traffic they handle, because that's really, really tough work. I don't know.
So you have to, I'm just reading through this blog post, you have to replace your current internet gateways and your current NAT gateway, and you have to enable an EC2 Instance Connect endpoint, which can support IPv6 only. And then you basically, in the VPC, you have to disable IP4 address allocation, and then you still select dual when you're a load balancer, but because you don't have it in your VPC, that overrides. It doesn't apply IPv4. Like, that is a confusing way to do this.
What a mess. Honestly, what a mess. What
a terrible implementation.
Yeah. They've obviously fired the people who could have done it the right way.
Yeah. The other fun link is the AWS services that support IPv6. They have the ones that say dual stack. They have the ones that say IPv6 only support. And then they have the ones that, that support those things. But there's still things like Lambda doesn't support dual stack. And you're paying for those IPv4s.
I'm more curious of if you turn off IPv4 inside your VNet, what's going to happen?
Well, S3 won't work apparently because it is not IPv6 only supported. AWS Secrets Manager won't work for you. AWS Site-to-Site VPN, Transit Gateway, Workspaces, they're all on the list here. ECS doesn't support IPv6 only. So, there's a bunch of these that don't support IPv6 only today. So if you're I assume maybe we're going to see a strong march to all the services supporting IPv6 only enabled by February, and maybe that's why that's the date they picked. But that's going to be interesting to see how this transitions, and I wouldn't be shocked to see this one get delayed, just to be based on other Amazon changes they've made and the reaction from the community. Interesting though, like the Twitter community was definitely saying IPv6 is the future. We should just get off IPv4. But again, I think it's really short-sighted because again, I have gigabit internet. Jonathan has the same internet provider I do. It just got IPv6 like 3 or 4 months ago. And then I was talking to some other people on some of the Slack rooms I'm in, their ISPs still don't support IPv4 or IPv6. So there's a lot of companies that still don't support IPv6. And yes, this can put pressure on them to do it, but at what cost and what time frame?
Yeah, it's definitely going to raise prices for people, especially service providers who, sure you can support IPv6, but if you don't know that your clients have that as an available option, then you have to pay for both. And a $10 a month service, which we used to allocate a public IP per customer, all of a sudden is like negative revenue because I'm paying $3 a month for the IP. It sucks.
Yep, it does. I'm not happy about the $12 I'll be now paying an additional cost in February for the CloudPod account. So, One more reason to move to GCP.
I don't think I'm on Verizon Fios at my house. I don't think that they support IPv6 from running a quick internet test. So, if we move the CloudPod over, I couldn't help you.
I support both IPv4 and IPv6 today. So.
Well, now you know.
Test-ipv6.com. You can find out today if you support it or not. But it's going to be interesting. I'll see if it sticks. I'm a little doubtful at the moment that it's going to stick, to be honest, on that date. I think it happens eventually. I just don't know that it happens in February 2024. It's not a lot of time for people.
0 out of 6.
But they're telling you before budgeting season, I guess. So that's a plus.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
All right, All right. Well, there's new instances this week. A new Graviton 3 processor-based local NVMe-based SSD, the C7GD, the M7GD, and the R7GD, and configurations from 1 CPU and 2 gigs of RAM all the way up to 64 vCPU and 512 gigs of memory. And so that's nice. But the more interesting one is the new P5 instance, powered by the NVIDIA H100 Tensor Core GPU for accelerating generative AI and HPC applications. This uses the latest NVIDIA H100 Tensor Core GPUs and provide a reduction of up to 6 times in your training timing. You can get a box with 192 vCPU, 8 H100 GPUs, and 2 terabytes of RAM. That is a doubling of both the RAM and the vCPU available to you from the P4D, which is its predecessor, which is a pretty large upgrade for those who need this kind of compute power, which is not me. And I didn't even run the numbers on this, but I assume it's like $4,000 a month kind of thing.
Just the cost of the hardware is phenomenal. I mean, I jokingly priced out a server from Supermicro that had a bunch of these GPUs in, for when win the lottery, and just one of those GPUs is $40,000 list price at least.
I assume Amazon doesn't pay list.
That's a lot of money. Now, if you amortize that over 6 years versus 5 years, you get you get your actual annual price. The breakdown about 12 months.
Yeah. So if anyone's got any lucky lottery numbers, let me know.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, Amazon is introducing AWS Healthscribe, a new HIPAA-eligible service empowering healthcare software vendors to build clinical applications that automatically generate preliminary clinical notes by analyzing patient-clinician conversations. I have been in a doctor's office where they had basically had a cell phone with a call to a transcriber right there. Sort of awkward to be talking to the doctor's talking to somebody on the phone at the same time as you with all the details, all the things. AWS Healthscribe analyzes the conversation audio to provide a rich consultation transcript, speaker role identification, transcript segmentation, summarize clinical notes, evidence mapping, and structured medical terms. So, very nice.
Yeah, it's. I haven't had the doctor on the phone to a scribe, but I've had a separate scribe in an office with an allergist. It's very strange having sitting there talking to a doctor and then having this random person just standing typing in the corner of the room, and occasionally they get instructions for doctor like, I'm standing right here. It's kind of very uncomfortable, very very odd. Interesting. I wonder what they're going to use the data for. I wonder who the main customer is.
Doctors who need to prove to their insurance companies that they deserve the bill they're charging. That's who. I mean, ideally, it's the customer, it's the patient who's getting better records in their files, and allegedly, but I don't know.
I fear that things like this will be used by insurance companies. They want to see the transcripts of conversations that you had over the years to evidence things for coverage. So I'd be concerned that this wouldn't actually work out in the consumer's favor at all.
Well, isn't Amazon opening a healthcare division? Like, didn't they buy One Medical years ago? And then I saw something in the news about it recently with One Medical and Amazon.
I don't know. I know they talked about going into prescriptions a few years ago.
Yeah, I think it's part of. There was some big announcement like in the last few weeks.
Isn't Amazon trying to buy a healthcare provider?
I mean, they bought One Medical, which was like, but that was a couple, I thought years ago. Oh no, earlier this year. Limited time offer.
Well, they announced it multiple years ago. It just closed this year.
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, ideally, that would be one of their probably first customers for medical transcription with doctor visits. And that could also lead to pharmaceuticals, which I think they do have a pharmacy play as well. So maybe it helps them streamline the end-to-end with PillPack and other things they own to get you the right medical care, I guess. Again, I was not a One Medical customer, but not that I don't trust Amazon, I do, but I don't know that I want them to have my health data.
I don't really want any large company to have my health data. I'm just going to go with that.
Well, I mean, any doctor network at this point is a big health company at this point. So,
yeah, different problem.
I can't help but think that the transcriptions will be anonymized and used to train machine learning models, and all of a sudden we'll have virtual Amazon doctor that we can call up on Chime and get a consultation for how many dollars.
I mean, it's first. Yeah, I mean, Chime is the start. Yeah. I have a flu, and you want me to learn how to use Chime to get to a doctor? I can.
Chime may be the most reliable thing in that whole path, though.
That's sad. Very sad. All right. Well, of course, AI is the topic du jour, and Bedrock has gotten its first new feature with preview of agents for Amazon Bedrock, which is a new capability for developers to create fully managed agents in a few clicks. Agents for Bedrock accelerate the delivery of generative AI applications that can manage and perform tasks by making API calls to your company's systems. Agents extend FMs to understand user requests, break down complex tasks into multiple steps, carry on a conversation to collect additional information, and take actions to fulfill the request. And the thing that jumped out at me was like, okay, yeah, I can use it to call my company's API system, but what if I use it to call your APIs, Amazon? This is the beginning of Skynet. I'm on to you.
I think we missed an opportunity naming the show title after Agent Smith.
Ooh, yeah, that would be a nice.
That would be good.
I am kind of excited to see what they do with Bedrock and kind of where this stuff is going, because it still feels pretty fundamental in what they've been announcing so far. And like, they don't really have a great LLM play that I can see quite yet. I mean, SageMaker, I guess, just got Llama support, and I think they got some support for some of the other open source LLMs. But I'm kind of curious to see if Amazon, goes the way they normally do, which is they steal an open source product and call it something else, or do they actually build their own LLM model that's going to be competitive to OpenAI and to Bard? That's kind of the big question mark.
I mean, I feel like they have to have enough data to be able to build their own LLM model.
You would think,
like internally, let alone based on the public internet.
There's a massive data set you can download for free to train things from. It's absolutely enormous.
Mm-hmm. It's all sitting on S3.
Yeah. I think Bedrock will probably be one of the products that have absolutely amazing feature announcements at reInvent this year.
We're getting close to prediction time and actually we're getting very close to Google Next prediction show too. But for the reInvent prediction show, like I almost want to take the bet, like they're not going to announce anything that doesn't have the word AI in it. I'm like, why would you announce anything that doesn't have AI? Like, this makes no sense.
The question is, are they going to hold any announcements at this point to reInvent, or are they going to lose too much market share because they don't have AI in their product announcements for the next few months? Because they're starting to reach that point of they'll hold stuff for a few weeks or a few months until reInvent.
They're kind of in the point where they start queuing up the stuff to like, we want to have 1,000 options of things we can announce at reInvent, and then they'll be like, you didn't make the cut, and then that stuff will ship. So we'll start seeing that stuff probably in September or October timeframe. But yeah, we'll see. It's gonna be interesting. Moving on to Google, again, they're a little bit quiet these days. I think they're prepping for Google Next, which is only like 4 weeks away or 3 weeks away at this point. It's 24 days. But this week they did say they have a new partnership with an AI company, and you would think to yourself, is it Llama 2? Is it Facebook, Meta? No, it's actually Anthropic, which no one knows what that is, but Google. And then Microsoft and OpenAI, which is sort of weird. They're announcing the formation of the Frontier Model Forum, a new industry body focused on ensuring safe and responsible development of frontier AI models. The Frontier Model Forum will draw on the technical and operational expertise of its member companies to benefit the entire AI ecosystem, such as through advancing technical evaluations and benchmarks and developing a public library of solutions to support industry best practices and standards. Those things include advancing AI safety research, identifying best practices, collaborating with policymakers, academics, and civil society and companies, and supporting efforts to develop applications that can help meet society's greatest challenges, which is okay, I guess. It's a little bit weird that it's a partnership between these companies. You think these would be the big titans of AI, but apparently not. And you can, if you are in the AI, you can join this still if you want to. If you develop and deploy frontier models, demonstrate a strong commitment to frontier model safety, and are willing to contribute to advancing the forum's efforts, including by participating in joint initiatives, you can join the foundation as well. So there you go.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Anthropic have already been working on AI safety for years. So instead of reinventing things from scratch, Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI probably do well to partner with somebody who's already been working on this.
What do you say about this reports that ChatGPT has gotten dumber?
I think there are billions of people, or millions of people making billions of requests, and I think the dumb things float to the top of the news pile.
So you don't think it's gotten dumber? You just think you don't think they've actually, you think it's just perception, huh?
There's definitely been changes, especially around sort of perceived legal threats to copyright infringement and things like that, because people already opened lawsuits against OpenAI for copyright infringement for doing things like replicating lyrics for songs or translating lyrics for songs and things like that, which I find bizarre because you can hire a translator and say, translate these lyrics, and when they give them to you in Spanish or Mandarin, they're not infringing copyright by performing that task. So I don't think OpenAI should also be liable for doing basically the same work. I guess that the problem is that data is built into their model that as it was trained, rather than being a service that does translation that takes the data from an external source, translates it, and then returns it to the customer. I don't know. I think that there's a lot of effort going into making ChatGPT safe and appropriate for different markets. And mostly, I think it's still of huge value. I've been using it a lot lately.
Oh, I'm still using it regularly, so I haven't noticed it, dumbing down. I'm also not asking it very complicated questions most of the time. At the moment, I'm not the best prompt engineer yet. I'm working on my prompt engineering certification, but I haven't noticed it's getting worse or better or anything. It answers my questions most of the time I ask. I haven't gotten to be a pretty good prompt person for AI images though. Like I've really the Dream Studio and I have gotten to be good friends in the last couple of weeks, making a lot of fun AI generated images. That's more my speed. So.
Did you see my Spider-Man image I generated with Dream Studio?
I did.
Yeah, I love that.
Well done.
That came out really well. I should post that on Twitter, actually.
You should.
Or X.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. Another new feature from Google this week, Attack Path Simulation, is now generally available in Security Command Center Premium Edition. This new threat prevention capability automatically analyzes a customer's Google Cloud environment to discover attack pathways and generate attack exposure scores to prioritize security findings, which I think is a really nice feature and really good to have. I just don't know why they're insisting that I pay the premium price for Security Command Center Premium to get it. I think every customer who's trying to secure their Google Cloud environment should have this for free as just part of the value add of having Google, especially since it's just simulations tell you, hey, you have a potential attack vector. Not necessarily, something where you're trying to infer something with my proprietary IP or anything else that would be involved here. It's just purely, I have a firewall port open, and you now can basically see that there's a path to get to that firewall port that I maybe wasn't aware of.
I just dislike security being paid extra features. If the whole point of, and a lot of the cloud companies models, the hyperscale models, is make yourself secure, the shared security model that we've talked about, where yes, you're responsible for it, but they're trying to help, given that they have a much broader customer base that they can see more common things. Like these shouldn't be extra things you pay for. All it's going to do is provide problems for the cloud vendors of how many, hey, these S3 buckets are publicly exposed. If Amazon then came out with a free product to help with those things, but it's like making security be a paid extra feature just always rubs me the wrong way.
So do you prefer the Amazon model where they don't invent security things and they make you buy it from a partner? Or do you prefer the upsell charge of the cloud vendors on security features?
I really dislike how in order to have stuff inside of a VNet in Azure, I have to go to the premium or isolated tiers. And I don't care about any of the other features, but I have to get there for the security features. So I don't know the answer.
Okay, I'm just curious because I agree with you in principle, but then I'm also like, but the alternatives, they don't do anything, and then I'm relying on Palo Alto and Wiz and all these other vendors to provide me basic security functionality, which is also kind of annoying because they charge you a lot of money for those things, which is the Amazon model.
I kind of sit in between the both of you, actually. I don't mind paying for it, but I don't want to have to pay for Security Command Center to get this. This should be a one-off thing. Scan my account, enumerate all the resources and the configurations and the paths and everything else that you know about. It's a one-time thing. I'll pay a fee per resource that's included in the scan and give me an answer. And thank you very much. That'll be $250. I'm done.
Here, let me play your security department. But what if they change something? Do I scan it once a day? Do we scan it once a week? Do we scan it on
If you want.
deployments? How often do we need to scan it?
Whenever you feel necessary, but I don't want to have to pay.
So then do you, in that model, then do you want the choice to subscribe so I don't have to pay for it every scan, or if you only want to scan once in a while, you pay the ad hoc fee? Like, it just gets complicated.
No, either one. I'd be happy with an ad hoc, and I'd also be happy with a subscription. But I'm not happy with having to pay for the Security Command Center.
Well, you know what really annoys me about Security Command Center is that I can't just enable premium on my account. I have to actually sign a 12-month contract for it, which is sort of annoying. It's not very cloudy in that nature. So, that's my bigger annoyance. So I don't mind turning it on and using it for, an hourly fee or whatever like that, which is basically what you're saying, which is what you would get if Amazon made it. But in the case of Google, if you enable Security Command Center, you have to get a contract and a commitment for 12 months for it, and then they can jack the price up at any time, and you don't have to pay even more money because you're on a commitment. So it's great, super awesome.
They also did that with Anthos, though, where like in order to enable it, it was like a 1 year minimum subscription.
Yeah, so, but I think that went away now, and that
it did.
That was really driven by, I don't think Anthos was really ready. So I think they were trying to have a high barrier to entry so that they didn't get riffraff in there. But it's come down quite a bit in price. I think it's only $1,000. I think you can go month to month now. It's much better than it used to be.
Seems backwards, charging for stuff that isn't finished. Charging customers who can pay $10,000 a month for stuff that isn't finished is not normally the model. You usually give it away to begin with and then charge more when it's ready.
Well, you're not going to get the startup who's super dependent on Anthos at 10,000 minimum commitment. For an enterprise who just wants to solve Kubernetes, they'll pay whatever it takes.
I haven't heard of that. It hasn't been in the news. I don't think Anthos has been in the news the entire year so far.
But AWS does the same thing also. Here's Macy for this obscene price. Oh, cool. Now that we've rebuilt it and made it be scalable, it's a 95% reduction or whatever it was. I mean, I feel like a lot of AWS services are like that.
Yeah, just Policy Controller Dashboard was the last Anthos announcement, which was from May. So it's been a bit. They had a couple of case studies come out. Yeah, it's been a while for any Anthos features. Again, they're holding those up for... and the throughput of Google features in the last 12 months has been pretty low. So I'm expecting Google Cloud Next to be just, everything you ever dreamed of, which I probably will be disappointed about. But that's what I'm hoping. So,
with AI tagged on the end?
With AI tagged on, sure. Okay. I can just turn that part off. All right, well, let's move on to Azure. Always learning, always adapting. Unpacking the Azure's continuous cybersecurity evolution, which is a blog series that they started talking about all the great things they're doing in cybersecurity, including prevention, which apparently is not code reviews or any security scanning or anything like, making sure your memory's safe, things like that. Detection, which is apparently your customer detects it. And response, which is deny it until you're publicly embarrassed and you had to put it on a blog post. So great. Azure uses a variety of tools and techniques to prevent attacks, including artificial intelligence, which isn't working, machine learning, and behavioral analytics. Azure also has a team of security experts who monitor for attacks and respond to incidents, and Azure is constantly evolving its cybersecurity measures to stay ahead of its latest threats. Too bad none of it works.
Yeah, I thought this was the Azure section. It turns out it was the irony section.
Yes. They do go into more detail in the article around, their Microsoft Security Response Center and their cyber defense operations. And they are doing a lot of good things on paper, but none of it's working. So make it work, and then tell me about how you fixed all the gaps you've had in the last 6 months. Because there's another one just another day, Tenable, I think it was called, right? The latest and greatest, not great situation over there. Please fix your issues.
That was Tenable literally saying, "Hey, we found a bug," and they said, "Cool, we fixed it." And normally when they fix it, they tell them how, so the pen tester can go back in and confirm that it was fixed. And they just said, "Hey, we fixed it." No one knows how they fixed it. If they just blocked Tenable's IPs or what they did.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I love Tenable CEO Emmett Uren had in his quote in the article, "Microsoft wants everybody to trust them, but they have a great lack of transparency and a track record of irresponsibility when it comes to disclosing vulnerabilities and breaches." And then he goes on to say, Microsoft will downplay, fail to disclose, not prioritize remediating, and they just do not have a great passion for reducing the risk their customers incur when using the Microsoft Azure cloud platform. Well, that's a guy who's not going to be a partner of Microsoft much longer. But yeah, no, we didn't cover that article this week because I felt bad. We beat up on Azure multiple times. We could do it through this article instead. So it's much better. It's positive and turn it into a negative. It's a very CloudPod move. So, all right. Well, that's it for the cloud news this week. And I hope you guys have another fantastic week out there in the cloud. See you next week.
See you later.
Bye, everyone.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions. All right, I have an after show. The bird is dead. Long live X.
Unbelievable.
For those of you in the dark.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Twitter rebranded to X Corp officially. And I have yet to get used to it. Every time I see a notification on my phone from X, I go, what the hell app is that? And, this is all tied back to Musk, who apparently has a much larger vision than 120 character tweets. The idea that Twitter will evolve into something new, the Everything app, or the public town square, which was further enforced when he hired Linda Yaccarino as CEO. Ironically, Linda wrote on Twitter that it's rare in life or business that they get a second chance to make another big impression. And I will tell you, they sure did with the people who live next to X headquarters in San Francisco, where they installed a huge X sign with LED lights that blinked all night long and then got torn down by the city because it was a public nuisance in its lighting, which I guess bad news is good news.
And they didn't have permits?
They did not permit it properly. Of course, what Elon Musk is he's a rebel. He doesn't follow permit laws. Why would he do that? So yeah, so X is the new app. I am there, I guess, still. So is Jonathan. Matt is still denying it. He went over to Mastodon. He's on our Mastodon account and over there. So if you're on the toots, you can follow him over there. But yeah, it's sort of weird. It's been a slow, long death now for X, Twitter, for 12 months now, and I sort of miss the old Twitter, and I definitely don't like the new Twitter. I don't know.
Has it really been 12 months? Wow.
I mean, it feels like it. I mean, it might not be that long. When did that acquisition close?
It's like November or sometime like that, I think. End of the year. But
yeah, basically a year.
I just cannot believe you would rebrand to something else. You've got shops with Twitter signs in the window. We've got websites with the Twitter signs. It's such an iconic symbol of the platform. To kill it and replace it with X is just, what a loss of kind of like marketing capital.
Yeah, I mean, we still have the bird on our website for a little icon we have for it. I don't know when that's going to get updated by our WordPress plugin vendor who makes that plugin. But I will be sad when it changes to X. I'll miss the bird.
Yeah, that would have made another funny show title. Yeah, Musk flips Twitter the bird.
It's just a bird.
So we definitely don't do show titles off of the after show, but we would have been good.
Yeah. Crazy.
I just liked, I was on a call when somebody told me that it was done, and they said, well, anybody that now goes to, show you Twitter, go to X and see how many people pull up xvids.com. It was like, yep, that's terrible.
So bad. Do you guys check out this Threads thing at all? This Instagram Threads?
No, I don't do Facebook.
Yeah, I do Instagram. I don't really do Facebook, which I know it's all Facebook. But it's till I'll die on and I'll live there. So Threads came out and I was like, I'll check it out. And then I signed into it and it was like, yeah, you can follow all the people on Instagram you follow. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't like most of those people. Like their brands and things that I want to see products. I don't want to see their I don't follow them on Twitter. Why would I want it? So I led it to, follow people I did like. And that took a long, laborious process because all of my Facebook and Instagram people are now in the list and you can pick from. And then for the next 3 weeks, I've gotten just people as they've forgot Threads too. And the first day or two was like, okay, there's a whole lot of things going on here. And now I checked it out the other day because I was just curious if anything was happening, and it's kind of died off. So I think it had its hype cycle, and they had 4 million daily active users because they all came from Instagram. And then after that, it's just dying on the vine because it's still missing. It's missing fundamental features that Twitter was always missing, like the ability to edit a thread, and other basic concepts that you think you'd want on a social media platform that just doesn't have. So yeah, you can copy Twitter, but you should probably do it better like Mastodon did. Other than the UI in Mastodon is a little rough.
I thought I saw that Threads was down 80% or something, user base this morning.
Well, everyone clicked on the thing to sign up and try it, and so
right.
Sure, the numbers were 300 million in the first week, but then nobody wanted to use it.
Yeah, because it wasn't great. I mean, if you're going to launch a new product, you need to make sure it's a good product, and that was not what happened.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm looking for in a social media platform anymore. I've been active on Reddit for a long time, and they're screwing with that. Twitter's a wasteland. I actually went through and checked to see who's retweeting my things, who's retweeting the CloudPod things, and mostly they're just spam accounts, because if you click on the profiles, it's like nudes or whatever else. Like, okay, that's not the audience I was hoping for, but okay.
I mean, it was. I mean, most of that audience moved over to Mastodon. Yeah. At least the tech, minded people. That's why I'm over there, and I know you have an account too, Jonathan, and Matt does. But like Mastodon, it isn't my first go-to. It's too. I don't know why. It isn't where I go to first. I don't know my phone.
It's just not easy enough yet.
Yeah,
it's not the easy go-to, click a button, you're there type of thing. Well, and I'm like Jonathan. Like, I haven't touched. I mean, I have Instagram on my phone. I have Facebook because there's a parents of the city I live in group that I look at every now and then for stuff for kids and things along those lines. But Reddit, with everything that happened, I haven't really touched that much recently. I don't use a lot of social media that much anymore.
Yeah. The Reddit thing is particularly annoying to me because I was a big Apollo user. And I know Jonathan's an Android person, so I'm sure he has an equivalent Android app that was good for Reddit. But going to the official Reddit clients are so bad.
It's terrible.
So bad comparatively to what I had with Apollo. And it's so sad that they decided to be that predatory about it. Like, I get that you're seeing it cannibalizing your market. You can't sell ads on those things, but like, those are things you can change on your API to deliver ads to the API to, and like not allow them to restrict them out. If you want to be compliant with the API terms of service, you could have given them time to, adjust I would have paid, however much it costs to keep using Apollo, because like I had used the old Reddit app for a long time, and I knew the new one was garbage, and I had hoped it had gotten better since I switched to Apollo. And I've been a very happy Apollo user for a while, and then it died, and I was sad, and I have it in my graveyard of apps. And I went and downloaded the official app again. I was like, oh no, it's gotten worse since I last used it. Like, it didn't get better while I was gone. And and the sad part of that is that they killed one of my other apps. They bought Alien Blue, which was actually a really good Reddit app, and they slowly bastardized Alien Blue to the point where they finally killed that and moved the dev team over to Reddit official. But still, like, whoever's the product team on that app is just horrible. They don't understand how anybody wants to use it. So yeah, that Reddit community is sad for me, because that's actually where I spend most of my social media time, is on Reddit. But I can't stand the new mobile app, so I don't use it as much.
Exactly what you said. I used Reddit is fun for the last 10 years or so. Great app, really nice features, multi-account support, so many nice things about it. But the new Reddit app, it seems literally its only purpose is to serve ads. So I wouldn't mind a Reddit clone, actually. If a Reddit clone came along, and Reddit was originally open source, so they've changed a lot since back then. But if a Reddit like clone came along and charged users, I don't know, $3-5 a month for things, but then let the developers build free apps on top of it, I'd be happy with that. I'd pay for that.
So there is a clone called Lemmy, which I have not used yet, but it's part of the whole Fediverse thing, which is also something that Mastodon's supposedly doing. And so if Apollo got updated to support Lemmy, or Reddit is fun got supported to Lemmy is fun, I would definitely consider making a pivot over to it. But right now, when I checked out Lemmy, what was available for mobile apps, it didn't look great, and it wasn't something I really wanted to get into right away. So I'm kind of waiting that one out. I'm just kind of waiting to see if, like, does the Apollo developer Christian come back with a new service that he's supporting or something. That'll be fine with me if he were to do that. But we'll see. Lemmy doesn't really seem to quite fit the bill for me. It's has sort of the same Mastodon problems, and like I suffered with Reddit's terrible UI for a very long time on the website. I don't know that I want to suffer that again. But the Reddit one that one still hurts, and it hurts every time I use the mobile app. Where Twitter killed their third-party apps, and the third-party apps were all kind of great, as well. They were definitely better than the official, but the official wasn't so bad compared to the unofficial clients. But in this case, the Reddit app is just garbage, just so much garbage.
Yeah, I think decentralized is probably the future for a global social media platform, which is affordable for people. Otherwise, I don't think there's VC money is going to pay to build yet another social media thing, which will almost be doomed to failure. So I think decentralized, but they need to fix the federation issues. They need to make it a lot more seamless than it really is. Make discovery easier. Thinking kind of like
yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the things about the threads that they're saying. Thread is supposed to be Fediverse compliant as well at some point in the future, which I doubt is actually going to happen. But if it did, that would be interesting too, because that would actually make the whole Mastodon ecosystem even more interesting. And again, maybe Lemmy is the right play. Maybe I shouldn't be poo-pooing it already because I haven't really used it. But it definitely feels like, the Reddit thing. Again, I'm sad about that. But the thing about the Twitter third-party apps is that they don't add any value, right? Like they're there. They do the same things Reddit app does. They strip out ads. Like I can see the argument why Twitter killed them, because they desperately needed the revenue because Elon burned the company down to the ground. So I get why that happened. But in the case of Reddit's built on moderators, right? And public moderation, who people who are doing all their own moderation of it. They care about their community. That's an unpaid job. People do that for free. And they use the third-party apps because there's no moderation capabilities in Reddit's app. So they do all their moderation in things like Apollo and stuff. So like they literally killed a tool that made moderators' lives easier. And then, they were dicks to them too, and they shut down their Reddit communities because they basically threatened them to take away their moderation rights and invoke new moderators. But yeah, the whole thing is kind of crappy on the Reddit side. Like